Blue eyes are a genetic trait that can be found in Nigerian dwarf Bytonics or fainting goats. Blue eyes can come in many different shades and sometimes can even be present as what is called marbled, where the inner part of the eye is blue with brown around the edges. In this video, we will go over how the genetics of blue eyes works, with 6 different Punnett squares related to the breeding of blue and brown-eyed goats. The purpose of this video is to educate breeders and buyers about the genetics of blue eyes, not so they can specifically breed for blue eyes, as that does not improve conformation, but rather to know the genetics of them to prevent DNA issues with registrations. Before we continue, I want to go over a few quick terms that I will be using in this video. The first is the term homozygous. A goat, or any other living thing, is homozygous for a trait if it has identical or the same alleles at a particular gene locus on homologous or corresponding chromosomes. For example, for a goat to be brown-eyed, it must be homozygous for the brown-eyed allele. The next term is heterozygous, which means that a goat has 2 different alleles for the same gene. For example, a goat that is heterozygous for blue eyes is one that has 1 blue-eyed allele and 1 brown-eyed allele. The last terms are the words genotype and phenotype. A genotype is the genetic makeup, whereas the phenotype is the outward appearance. Finally, with all that covered, let's take a look at the genetics of blue eyes. There are 2 eye colors possible in goats, blue eyes and brown eyes. There is a lot of variety in the gene expression and shade of these colors, but regardless, the genetics are the same. The blue-eyed allele is autosomal, meaning it is not sex-linked and passes the same way regardless of whether the dam or sire was the one with blue eyes. For those of you that don't know, the word dam refers to the mother and the word sire refers to the father. The blue-eyed allele is also dominant, while the brown-eyed allele is recessive. This means that for a goat to have brown eyes, it must be homozygous, meaning it has 2 copies of the brown-eyed allele. The gene symbol for the blue-eyed allele is a capital B, and the gene symbol for the brown-eyed allele is a lowercase b. Keep in mind that when a gene symbol is capitalized, that means it is dominant to the lowercase 1, which represents the recessive. With all that covered, let's take a look at the 6 different Punnett squares related to the breeding of blue and brown-eyed goats. The first pairing is brown-eyed x brown-eyed. Both parents are homozygous for the brown-eyed allele. Because brown eyes are recessive to blue eyes, if a goat has brown eyes, you automatically know he or she cannot pass the blue-eyed gene. This pairing will produce 100% brown-eyed offspring. The genotype of all kids from this pairing is the same as the parents, lowercase b/lowercase b. If you do get a blue-eyed kid from this, that means the parentage is incorrect because at least one parent must have blue eyes in order for a kid to get them. If you get a blue-eyed kid from 2 brown-eyed goats, you need to do a DNA test to see if there might have been a mix-up in the breeding plans. The second pairing is a heterozygous blue-eyed goat bred to a homozygous brown-eyed goat. This pairing is similar to flipping a coin. 50% of the offspring should be heterozygous for blue eyes, meaning they have a phenotype of blue eyes and a genotype of capital B/lowercase b. And the remaining 50% should be homozygous for brown eyes, meaning they have a phenotype of brown eyes and their genotype is lowercase b/lowercase b. Keep in mind that this 50% does not necessarily split evenly within a litter. This kidding season, I had 9 kids born with a possibility of blue eyes, because their sire was heterozygous for blue eyes. The first doe had 3 kids, 2 of which had blue eyes, 1 that had brown eyes. The second doe had a single with brown eyes. The third had triplets, 2 with blue eyes and 1 with brown, and the fourth doe had 2, 1 with blue eyes and 1 with brown. Altogether, 5 kids had blue eyes and 4 kids had brown eyes. The third pairing is a homozygous blue-eyed goat bred to a homozygous brown-eyed goat. From this pairing, 100% of the offspring should be heterozygous for blue eyes, with a genotype of capital B/lowercase b. If any of these kids do not have blue eyes, that means that either the blue-eyed parent was heterozygous, not homozygous, or one of the parents was incorrect. Keep in mind that oftentimes you cannot tell whether a goat is homozygous or heterozygous for blue eyes without test breeding or knowing who the parents were. It is also important to note that a kid cannot be homozygous for blue eyes unless both parents had blue eyes. And even still, it is not guaranteed whether that kid will be homozygous or heterozygous for blue eyes. The fourth pairing is a heterozygous blue-eyed goat bred to a heterozygous blue-eyed goat. This pairing is one of 3 ways you can end up with homozygous blue-eyed goats. In this pairing, 25% of offspring should be homozygous for blue eyes, meaning they have a phenotype of blue eyes and a genotype of B/B. 50% should be heterozygous for blue eyes, meaning they have a phenotype of blue eyes and a genotype of B/b. Keep in mind you won't be able to tell the heterozygous and homozygous blue-eyed kids apart without test breeding when they're older. The remaining 25% should be homozygous for brown eyes, meaning they have a phenotype of brown eyes and a genotype of B/b. The fifth pairing is a homozygous blue-eyed goat bred to a heterozygous blue-eyed goat. This pairing is another way you can end up with homozygous blue-eyed offspring, although you likely won't be able to tell them apart from their heterozygous blue-eyed siblings. In this pairing, 50% should be homozygous for blue eyes with a genotype of B/B, and 50% should be heterozygous for blue eyes with a genotype of B/b. All kids should have blue eyes. If they do not, that means that either both parents were actually heterozygous for blue eyes, or there was a mix-up in the breeding plans. The last pairing is a homozygous blue-eyed goat bred to a homozygous blue-eyed goat. All of the offspring from this pairing will be homozygous for blue eyes with a genotype of B/B. With all of that covered, you're probably wondering what the best way is to tell if a goat is homozygous or heterozygous for blue eyes, and the way to tell is by test breeding, unless there's a genetic test out there I don't know about. I do not recommend this if you're just trying to create more blue-eyed goats, but it is important for the sake of verifying parentage. Firstly, keep in mind that a goat cannot be homozygous for blue eyes unless both parents had blue eyes. If you breed a blue-eyed goat to a brown-eyed goat, if all the kids from a very large sample size come out with blue eyes, you can take an educated guess that your blue-eyed goat is homozygous for blue eyes. If you breed a blue-eyed goat to a brown-eyed goat, if any of the kids come out brown-eyed, that means your blue-eyed goat is heterozygous for blue eyes. In conclusion, blue eyes are a dominant trait that, although does not add anything to the goat quality-wise or health-wise, is a fun gene that can occasionally happen to work its way into breeding plans. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.